Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Intuition Revolution. I'm your host, Kim Chestney, and today's guest, Audrey Russo, is the president and CEO of the Pittsburgh Technology Council. She has worked with some of the most powerful tech companies and innovators on the planet. I am thrilled to have her here today to talk with us about the extraordinary role of intuition in business. I have known Audrey for over a decade. Her innovative and unconventional mindset has been hugely influential on my own work. She's a powerhouse in the tech sector and a force of nature in her own right, as you are about to find out. She showed me early on the real value of intuition and creative genius in the advancement of both technology and global culture. So I am beyond excited to have Audrey here today to talk about the big picture of intuition, which is our influence on our future. So welcome, Audrey.
Welcome. So great to be here. So proud of you. So amazing to watch you unfold and unleash and see you probably at sort of the pinnacle of your work in your life, which is really fantastic. I'm thrilled to have had one little iota of association with you over the years. So this is a great way to spend my time with you.
Well, it's been more than a little iota. You have been just such a huge influence on everything I've done. I certainly wouldn't be here without having had the opportunity to be influenced by your innovative perspective on, technology and intuition and creativity and all those things that were near and dear to my heart. It's like when I met you, I just knew, talk about intuition. Like I knew the first time I met you, I just had this feeling. I was like, there was a connection there. There was something about you that just made things fit. The way that you could take technology and business and all these things that were really traditional in a certain sense and see them in this light of creativity and ingenuity and how important that was and really how validating it was for artists and creatives, because creativity is really applied intuition, right? That our source of all that creativity is our intuition. We have to kind of take that inner genius, which is that jump that's more than, just learning the formulas and, the traditional roots and sort of following ourselves. So you really got that. And it really excited me and allowed me really to grow and blossom and explore all this work in a really meaningful way. So I am forever appreciative of that. And I'm so excited to talk with you and with the people out there today to really share some of this. And I want them to hear it from you as an expert, because really the experiences that you've had have really gone to a whole nother level, because you really are out there, meeting with these tech companies and meeting with these people who are true innovators at the leading edge all around the globe. So, this book talks about radical intuition. And I mean, it's radical in the sense that intuition and technology are, as you like to say, strange bedfellows, right? So many people don't understand this connection between our creative inner genius and things like innovation in business. So when did you kind of start seeing this intersection emerging as a leading edge concept?
Well, it's so interesting because there's a couple of things that I'm thinking about now as you started to talk and articulate your own journey and our connection, is that what was always fascinating to me when I first met you, and just to sort of set the table for people who might not understand that, is that I took over an organization with the intent of a massive transformation. And very, very early on, I saw in our own organization back then that we were not leveraging innovation and creativity, which is highly overused. Okay, so I don't want to diminish the importance of those words, but just to reflect back, is I looked around, and one of the things that I do very often, and I've looked at an early age, is to scan the environment. And to scan the environment includes it's the people, it's the places, and it's all the stuff that people use to get them to the sort of that next iteration. And to me, work is creative. And while I might not be quote unquote an artist, what I am is a creative person that's tenacious and always trying to figure out ways to look at the interrelation to create a bigger picture. But designing also means systems and people. And in order to do that, you have to surround yourself with people who can think so differently. And one of the things that I've learned at a very young age, because I've been very lucky to lead people through most of my career, is knowing that I can never do any work myself. And you just can't. Yes, you can be lucky to be in a role, you can be in a position, but the great leaders and thinkers realize that you can never do anything alone. And in order to get to know people, it's not just the work that they do, it's how they approach their lives and how they approach the way that they see themselves in the world. And so I think you and I had a connection because of all of those variables, right? It doesn't always happen with everyone. You know, you went out on a limb to try to take our arts and tech and try to have different conversations with people around a community that is still, even to this day, thrashing about. And so we used to have a lot of very funny things that happened with each other. And some of the very funny things is we would joke and you would say, "Are you psychic?" I would be thinking about something and you would be thinking about something, or something would happen and it would both collide, and it would happen over and over again. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah. Oh, all the time. Yeah.
It would happen so frequently, and that, you know, you can't quantify that other than saying we could tell you when it happened, and we could tell you how we peeled it back, and we could tell you how we would laugh, or we could tell you, but it happened too often to be ignored, So, you know, the question is that a combination of things? Is that intuition? Is that coincidental? Is it energy that you're lying on the same wavelength? Is it the fact that two people go on a similar journey and have similar experiences, but really pay attention to their affect as well as their intellect? That's what I appreciate about your work, because while it's intuition, again, like creativity and innovation, can be overused, I think what you're trying to do is say, no, there is something basic in how we interact as humans that we tend to gloss over.
Absolutely.
And that's sort of where I've landed in my life as a result of having the luxury of leading so many different people and groups over the course of my career. It's sort of like that quantitative and qualitative data collection. And now, you know, I can feel myself when, I can also feel myself when it comes to making decisions when it's wrong, if I don't pay attention to some of those more basic primal kind of exchanges. And I just only operate in my quantitative head, which, as you know, despite all this creativity and innovation and relationship piece, I tend to gravitate around a lot of facts sometimes. And I like to be fact-based, and I like to be able to, you know, feel like I'm equipped with quantitative information. But I think, you know, where you lie in all this work that you're trying to peel back and try to rise people's level of awareness to, is it's a delicate balance of all of that. If you don't pay attention to where you are in terms of your intuition and relationships with people, you may miss a lot. And it's very hard for a leader to be vulnerable all the time. You know, so learning how to balance that with leading people and understanding that there's a whole cast of humans out there has really been my life journey.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head 100% with this idea of balance, right? And talking about the facts and intuition, because it's not one or the other. It's not like, oh, I'm either an intuitive person or I'm like a fact-based person or a linear-based thinker, right? It's about this combination, this coming together, this unity that we're really starting to experience, because it's been so divided. And that's one of the things that from a very beginning, you and I felt that division, right? You know, it was siloed. We had like the tech people here, the creative people here. You had like intuition versus the mind. It was just a us and them sort of mentality. And that was like one of our very first sort of missions, was to bring them together and watch the magic. And it's that sweet spot, that little area where they came together and overlapped, where all this magic started happening, right? And that's why when we started doing the studies with CMU and the University of Toronto
Right.
and looking at what that collaboration, like you were
Right.
saying, people together, the connection of people together, how important it is for people who are different from each other to work together. All of that is tied into intuition and innovation and creativity. So it really is this balance of this bringing these two oddball things that were at war for years and pushing each other down, female and male, right? All of our archetypes that go with that, and really finding this synergy where they're all connected and interplay as one and support each other instead of fighting each other.
Well, it's somewhat cliche, and you brought it up earlier about the strange bedfellows. It is one of the things that I feel most passionate about, is that surrounding myself with people who are not like me and don't think like me. It's really hard. And I sometimes it's just like, oh, I just want people just to agree with me. This is so painful. But the more you really seek that out, and the more because it makes you learn and listen,
Yep.
is the better you can be to help people move to that next iteration. And I know it sounds, again, sort of, non-quantifiable, but the journey of being a leader is not just quantifiable stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And me, I'm all about making a profit, having, material outcomes, making sure that, impact is apparent and is critical in terms of what we do. But, today people wrestle with what's a culture, what's a leader, and what my heart at this point, as well as my mind, appreciates is that you're taking those things on. You're trying to take on and saying, maybe it isn't just that, right? Maybe it isn't just, mastering certain kinds of competencies, but maybe really being a leader is pulling people along with you on a journey that you might see a true north, but you don't know the exact journey of getting there. You directionally know, but you don't necessarily know, and that's the joy.
That is,
and that's the joy.
And that's what I loved about working with you. And I think that's part, you talked earlier about how we kept having these psychic experiences and these serendipities. We were so aligned in this vision, even if it wasn't totally conscious. Like, we had no idea what we were doing or where we were going, but we knew we were onto something, right? We felt the momentum, we felt the energy. People showed up at our event and broke fire code, so we knew that we were onto something. But we didn't know where we were going. And that's how you know. It's like, that you're doing something right when you have no idea what you're doing,
Right. Well, I mean, part of it is having the confidence. I mean, it's a tricky process. It's a tricky process. But I think as long as we were bound by one another, at least, for at least the good 8 years of it, is that we were bound by one another and could have a good cadence back and forth, it helped me grow, and I think it really helped you grow, which was, to me, that's the beauty of the work that I do. Even though I work in this tech scene, you and I maybe could have been working in another domain and still have had this kind of experience with one another, because
Absolutely.
You stayed so true to what was your inner balance and what was your intuition.
Right. And it really was the missing piece for me, because, with my first book I wrote on intuition years ago, before I even met you. And, I got like half of it. I got the partial picture of intuition, but it wasn't until you and I really dove in to this work in the arts and technology and creativity that really the whole full spectrum of the application of intuition really opened up in my mind. Like, I didn't realize the application of it on a grander scale. It is our link to this really spiritual place inside of us, and the heart of our core deep inside. But it's also very practical, and it's also very important in really the advancement of our culture and society, right? And it's been overlooked for so long, and seeing it and bringing these people in, and the speakers that we worked with, and all these amazing thought leaders
Yeah.
that came through our doors, that we had a chance to like pick their brain and start hearing them talk about intuition like it's this holy grail, right? Like these the design and the innovation all tied into this little spark that gives you that new idea. Like that's invaluable, right? That's more valuable than like learning the formulas or following the path. And I think it's really interesting. One of the things we joked about was like, no more. I think one of the things, after we had some meeting with someone, we're like, we're never going to use the term again. We're like staying relevant. Someone said their goal in life was to stay relevant, and we're like, your goal is not to stay relevant. Your goal is to lead the way for others, right? And that's where intuition comes in. You don't follow other people, you follow yourself.
What I want to say to people who are listening and they think about their careers and they think about their skill sets and they think about, that they're actually doing at the moment, is that anything is possible and realistic. And the magic is being, lifting your head up and making sure that you can look around to see who are those people that want to help you, that can help you, and that you can reciprocate and help them, because it's not just a one-way street.
Well, I think a lot of it too is about, like, you hear people use the term like follow your calling or listen to your calling. I think there's a part of us inside that feels like we're meant for something more, and that there's more out there, but there's a risk. There's a risk to taking those chances, and like, am I going to fail? I'm in a safe space right now, and you have to make this decision. Am I going to stay in my safe space, or am I going to jump out there and try something new that could fail miserably, and then I could end up with nothing, or I could take a chance on myself and be better and happier and more impactful than ever in my life. And that's what's so important. I like what you say about helping others too, because a lot of times, we have these callings to reach our potential and to live our best life and all that stuff, but it's centered on serving other people. And like, what can I do? What can I bring to the world that's going to make the world a better place? That's going to help other people to live their truth. And so we all rise together, right? So that's kind of what this whole, how many times have we heard that phrase? We all rise together. We work together. We grow together. So this idea of connectivity again comes back full circle.
Well, over the last decade, I've sort of created a boilerplate that says living your best life is just creating. Perhaps that's really what we really are here for, is to create. So you've got to think about creativity in a very different way. And unfortunately, we have young children who go through school systems that are not, they're working for a test, and they're not being nurtured around creativity. So we now have these couple of generations that we've got to help unravel, so that they understand that what they're here to do is to create and to build.
Absolutely.
And that's turned my head upside down, actually, to tell you the truth. I don't know if 10 years ago or 12 years ago I would have said that. But now, and when I see the work that you're doing in terms of manifesting, articulating, writing, coalescing, convening, what you're doing is you're helping people create.
Absolutely.
And that create means something so different to each and every one of us. But if it's in our fiber and in our day that we understand that creating is a piece just like breathing,
yes,
then we've lived good lives.
Right. And creating, this is the other thing that people have to realize, creating doesn't just mean like being an artist, right? Creating, you can create in so many ways. Regardless whether you're building a business or whether you're trying a new project or whether you're working in your garden or cooking. There's just so many manifestations of creativity. And at the root of all of them is our intuition, because that's like our muse. It's like our inner muse. That's our inner intuition giving us those ideas and inspiring us to try those new things and get out of our comfort zone and experiment and do all that stuff. So creativity is a huge aspect of intuition. And that's why artists are traditionally some of the most intuitive people out there, artists, musicians, people like that, because it's just become such a natural pathway. But you don't have to be an artist or a musician, everyone's creative in their own way.
And the more that you incorporate that into your day, the more tuned you are into your ability to be intuitive.
Absolutely. And the more you, it's like the more you use it, it's like your muscles. The more you use it, the
It's
stronger it
good.
gets. And that's
We're
why
atrophied.
artists are so good at it, because they're creative all the time. You know, it's just
Right.
practice. Practice makes perfect. So
Right.
let me ask you something. So do you have any examples that you could share with folks about any cool stories of how intuition's come through with your life, or done something cool for you, or experienced something neat?
It's just constant, Kim. There's so many different examples. I mean, you know, it ranges from times, and I alluded to this, a few minutes ago, to times where I absolutely knew what to do when it comes to even hiring a person, to working on a particular project, when I absolutely knew and I ignored it. That's when it really, really resonates with me, when I ignore it. And it is not, sometimes it's very visceral. It's very visceral, where I can, feel it in my stomach. I can see it with a lot of clarity, and I ignore it. Is when, to me, those are the most provocative and marked moments for me, is when I know I shouldn't have done that, or I knew I should have done X, Y, and Z. And yet all the cards that I knew, because really it is like a muscle. And if you don't pay attention to it, you do atrophy.
Right.
And if you do atrophy, it's really hard to get back, sort of get back into it. But it takes this deep amount of listening, both to yourself and the person or people that you're with, to really extract that. And it just happens on and on for me, and on.
Well, I love that example of, well, first of all, like that knowing without thinking, right? Like Blink and Malcolm Gladwell, that is really, that's first of all, especially when you're hiring or doing anything in business, just having that gut feeling or that inner knowing that this is the way. And I'm so glad you brought this up about not following our intuition, because that really is what teaches us. We learn because we're like, oh, I knew that. Like I had a sense about that and I didn't do it. And now now I have to do it the hard way instead of the easy way, right? Which is like, if we just listened to our intuition all the time, then we could do things the easy way, because that's what our intuition wants. It's like, it's showing us the truth. So, we have a clear perspective and we have a clear pathway. So we are more likely to succeed and achieve the results we want without having to, hire someone 3 times to get to the right person or whatever, right?
Well, the more you are aware of it and the more that you can converse about it, the more in many ways the muscle becomes so strong that it becomes a way of how you interact. Now, there would be some people who might listen to this and say, well, we do assessments and we do, different kinds of tests to make sure people fit. And we do some of that as well. We do that here at the Tech Council as well. But it isn't, a silver bullet. And very often the people who have the most impact and have the most capabilities are the ones that fall outside of many of these kinds of traditional kinds of assessments. So it has to be a blend.
Right.
It has to be a blend. And, as we look at like this new century that we're in, and people talk about work and culture, because as you know, that's something near and dear to me, work and culture and growth and leadership, is that we're moving into this era where more people will have lots and lots of jobs and careers in their life, lots and lots of different kinds of opportunities in the way they work, whether it's through freelance, whether it's through contract work, whether it's through part-time work, whether it's through piecing 5 jobs together, etc. We have to be more sophisticated in understanding how we accommodate people in their whole lives. And many people who are leaders today are not prepared for that. They're not prepared for the complexity of what people bring or don't want to bring, to the table. And I think we're at a very big inflection point in terms of how people work, what they want, what their definition is of a whole life, that we have an opportunity to educate more people into understanding themselves. Because if you don't understand yourself, it's very difficult to play in the myriad of this new arena of how people are moving. So I think we're like at an inflection point.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, and that human element is so important. So it's really, again, comes back to that idea of balancing, balancing both sides of our brains, both the ways that we work, and reconnecting on a big level. So, so I mean, this has been a great conversation. Before we go, let me just ask you one more thing. Do you have any advice for entrepreneurs or anyone looking to innovate their business and carve out their unique niche in the world by being creative or innovative?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I think a couple of things. Number one is, just because your idea is your passion, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a business. And just because you think you have a solution doesn't mean that you have a business. So the most important thing is to get close to customers all the time.
I love this conversation. Okay, this is great. Let's unpack this a little bit. So this idea of just because you have a passion doesn't mean you have a business.
Right.
This is huge, right? Because this is something that I talk about a lot, because our passion leads us to our purpose. So how do we know when our purpose is to do, something that's like a hobby or something that's for personal fulfillment versus something that's our job and our livelihood?
Right.
What do you think about that?
The more that you can test this with people who could be your customers, and that means a whole lot of listening, and understanding how to convert people into purchasing or being interested in your product or service, whatever it may be. Because once you have customers, you have revenue. Mm-hmm. And once you have revenue, you're in a relationship now with people who are expecting things from you. But if you do it the reverse way very often, which I see people do, then it becomes an even more painful journey. Mm-hmm. Being an entrepreneur is a painful journey, just in and of itself. So to me, getting as close as you can to your customers, because then you're getting unfettered feedback. Then you're getting the brutality. Then you're getting, sort of the quote unquote love of your product. You're getting this feedback early on, just like you do when you're an agile programmer. You're getting feedback in an iterative way in real time so that you're constantly making your product better. I see too many people not getting close to their customers early on. And the brute force of being close to your customers builds up. It does build up your character and understands what the problem is. And the problem may not be what you think it is. And it may be something different. So, and then the other thing is, understand who else is out there in the market. What are they doing? Understand them. Because you're not the only one doing this. I don't care how many times people say, I'm the only one doing this, no one else is doing this. No, it's not true. Mm-hmm. It's just not true. Everyone's working on problems. We have millions of people that are trying to solve things all around the world. And those that get to the finish line understand their customers.
Yeah, amen to that. That's a great quote there. Honestly, and that's, again, comes back to this idea of connectivity. And it is intuitive connectivity, because you want to know, speaking of service and who we want to serve and help, we want to understand how we can actually serve. You don't want to build a whole product because you think, oh, this is going to get, notice I said think, like in your head, you're in your head thinking this is going to interact with the person in a certain way. When in reality, you only know through almost like field testing, where you go out and you experiment and you try something. Does this resonate? Do people like this? Do people respond to this? Mm-hmm. Right? And then you pull out those bits and pieces that people respond to. And if nobody's responding to it, then that's information, right? It's like, okay, maybe I need to pivot. Maybe I need to try this, right? And okay, go ahead.
You know how many times people have said to me, I've got the perfect solution, but the people are not smart enough to adopt it. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. It's not about the technology or the solution. It's about the adoption and what you're disrupting and why people would gravitate towards that.
Right. And presenting it in a way like taming complexity enough that it's accessible to people, that they can get it and understand it. And in terms of what you were saying earlier about knowing your market and the other people that are out there, and this is where intuition and innovation and ingenuity come in, is, what can you do that's similar to that, but different and unique in your own way, that makes you special and offer something that no one else is doing to a degree, right? Because we are, like you said, we're all solving the same problems. There's a million people out there who teach intuition, but there's not a million people who teach intuition the way I teach intuition, right? And the same goes with like everything, right? We want to find our unique voice and our unique way of serving, but it's based on something that if no one else in the whole world is doing it, there might be a reason why. You know what I mean? It's a good thing if other people are doing it.
Yeah, well, I think we've tried to boil down solving the world problems in the time that we're together. You and I tend to do that.
That is so
anyway,
true.
So
Well, thank you, Audrey, for being such a huge advocate of intuition and creativity, and for leading the charge on this revolutionary way that we work and do business. So you guys can learn more about Audrey at her website, pghtech.org, or check out her podcast, Tech Vibe Radio, on iTunes, right? You can get it on iTunes. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Audrey. Take care.